All right, welcome back into the podcast. Excited to keep this tradition alive. I don't even know when this tradition started, but I guarantee when it started, you hadn't heard of either of us. And that is Draft Talk with EJ Snyder. He is at Football EJ, of course, Windy City Gridiron's own, and the Bootleg Football Podcast with Brett Coleman. EJ, Bill Zimmerman, it is draft time, and that means you've got to be busy, but you got to be on cloud nine.
It's both. It is the busiest time of the year. It is the most exhausting time of the year, but it is exciting. It's like the run up to Christmas, honestly, for me. You know, you've been planning and plotting and buying and wrapping. And, next week we're going to get to see it all under the tree on the morning or evening in this case, and really see the next wave of talent coming into the NFL.
Absolutely. And this one's going to be a lot of fun with the Bears having 2 top 10 picks. And of course, the conversation for months was that number 1 pick. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on it because of how much time we spent on it, how much time the Bears spent on it. And, basically we know where they're at. We know it's going to be Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams knows it's going to be Caleb Williams. He retweeted Jaquan Brisker and then took it away because he went, oops, I probably shouldn't be doing this yet. So we out know where everything is. So instead of just trying to heap more praise on Caleb, I'm going to ask you one question, then we're going to move off. If we're looking at Caleb objectively, what are your biggest concerns that you think may hold him back from being able to reach a high level of potential?
Ooh, it's a great question. I would say he's got to trust his teammates, and he's going to have all new teammates, and that's going to be difficult. And with the state of the Chicago offensive line, he might look at tape from last year and say, I don't feel really secure, but there have been some changes in the law, to quote Fletch. He's going to not have to try and hit a 5-run home run every time, which is what a scout said about him at the combine. And it looks like he's trying to hit a 5 home run every time he's at bat. And he's going to have to relax and play in the offense. He's still going to have the same adjustment woes that every rookie does. I think he'll overcome them pretty quickly because of lots of things. Again, we don't need to go into all those, but as long as he can sort of play within himself and trust that DJ Moore and Keenan Allen and Cole Kmet and Shane Waldron have his back, I think he'll be very good very quickly. But if he comes in and goes, man, I am the number 1 pick, I am the face of the franchise, I am the face of the NFL, I am the shining hope for Chicago quarterbacking for this century, things could go off the rails if he thinks he has to perform like that, as opposed to saying, hey, I have to be a competent cog in this offense and do my job.
And while we kind of start transitioning to the 9th pick, and I want to kind of walk through the top 10 here, kind of figure out how this is going to look at number 9 potentially for polls. What do you think ideally? I mean, look, there's 50,000 ways to look at the best way to support a quarterback, and they've done a lot with Keenan Allen and DJ Moore with trying to help out the offensive line a little bit. Not an amazing offensive line, but one that should keep him upright, more than on his back, but defense, pass rush, keep the opposing offense off the field, all these different things. So all things being equal, which I know they are not, at number 9, what is a direction? I'm not asking you to give me the player, but what is kind of a direction? What is the concept for you in terms of the smartest thing to do at 9 for the team and the rookie quarterback?
It's a great question because there's short-term and long-term, and the NFL
Absolutely.
can be very, very short-term focused. And those would lead you in different directions. I think it's pretty simple. We had a talk with Daniel Jeremiah earlier this week. That podcast came out yesterday. And one of the things he said in there that really caught me was when you have this debate, and he was largely talking about the Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase debate, and saying, when it comes right down to it, instead of really leaning into positional value or scarcity in the draft or anything else, I'm just looking at the 2 players. And I'm saying, who do I have graded higher? Who do I think is a better football player, period, regardless of anything else? And there's a wisdom to that, to strip all the other stuff away from it. You have to think about contract. You have to think about need. You have to think about everything else. But if you really are coming down to 2 different players and just saying, it brings me back to the whole point of draft picks. What is the entire point of draft picks? It's to get quality players with them. Like, that's what they're for. So if you can take a pick as valuable as 9 and look at a few options and say, look, I just think this is the best football player, And it doesn't double up somewhere you're loaded with stars, which, look, the Bears are not loaded with stars in very many places. That's what's going to build your football team. And that's what good football teams do. That's what Baltimore does, right? Everybody gets angry at Baltimore every year when they pick up dollars that everybody else has dropped late in the first round, typically, right? That's what they do. They just go, well, that's a good football player. We'll take him. And sure enough, their roster is very solid year after year. So where you get into trouble is saying, well, this guy's a better football player, but we have a bigger need at edge or something else. And okay, this is our 9th ranked player and this is our 15th ranked player, but we really need, and we're just take the 9th ranked player,
Right.
like take the good football player. So that's what I want to see them do, because I don't think the Bears are in a place where they are going to be driven so much by need. And that's a weird thing, because Chicago has been for a long time.
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, there are certainly holes on this roster, and we'll talk about them here as we approach the 9th pick and potentially, later picks, 75 and 122. And if they get a second round pick, we'll talk about that as well. But let's kind of talk about how to get to the 9th pick here before we talk about what to do with the 9th pick. And let's talk about kind of the first 8 picks of the draft. Obviously, we know Caleb Williams is going 1. It certainly feels, Adam Schefter has tripled down that Jaden Daniels is going to be the 2nd pick to the Washington Commanders. Yep. I know he also said that he was confident Mac Jones was going to the 49ers. So it shows you how difficult it is to be an expert about the NFL draft in terms of who's going where, especially being lying season and smoke screens and everything. But regardless of whether Jaden Daniels goes to Washington or not, I certainly feel he's going to be one of the top 8 picks in the draft. So before we get to other positions, Drake May and JJ McCarthy. Let me ask you about these two, and if you think they're going in the top 8, because this is, when I try and talk to people and get a feel for players, Drake May to me feels, I understand they're completely different than Justin Fields, but hear me out. It feels a lot like Justin Fields in the 2021 draft, where all year, Trevor Lawrence QB1, Justin Fields QB2, from September to January. And then all of a sudden, all these other quarterbacks start popping up, and next thing we know, Justin Fields is going 11th to the Bears. So it feels a little bit like that for me with Drake May, because look, when I look at Drake May, I see a good quarterback prospect. I see one that's more intriguing than JJ McCarthy. But when I talk to NFL type people, EJ, and maybe you've heard differently, I hear a lot of praise for JJ McCarthy and a lot of negative towards Drake May.
I think it's that time of year. I hear a lot of similar things, and it's funny because then my ear turns over and says, well, what are they saying? What are the points of contention? Because in tone and tenor, you're absolutely correct. That is how it's been represented easily for the last month. When I listen to the positives about McCarthy, and this gives me pause because of historical precedent, they don't, for the most part, talk about things on the field. Not first, not second, not even third.
Intangibles.
Man, he's great in the room. He's a good kid. He's a strong leader. He's a winner. I'm like, get to the football part. Like, everybody will say those are football parts, and they are. The bottom line is the NFL is a talent league, and JJ McCarthy is a talented guy, but it worries me that all these people in positions of power will say 4 or 5 things about McCarthy before they mention any of his physical prowess, of which there's a lot. He's got good size, 220, ran a lot early in his career, has showed that he can do that, runs less now, which is more desirable.
He's only 20 years old.
Young guy, definitely adaptable, definitely all those things. Very polite and, well-schooled in football mechanics. Not a super experienced guy in terms of what he could do. Has good tape out there, makes NFL throws on tape, but you have to look a lot to find them. Now, the question is, if you just sort of add more volume on top of that, will you just continue to see the same rate of good things versus bad things? A lot of people will say, yeah, absolutely. Progression's not linear, not necessarily always how it works in the NFL. And with May, there are, again, a lot of great things on tape. His running is terribly underrated. He is the second best running quarterback in this draft, by far, production-wise. Daniels is a step ahead of him as well. But of all the other quarterbacks, even including Caleb, who is a very good and very slippery runner, Drake May is a better runner than Caleb Williams. So, tons of tools. There are inconsistencies. I have my issues with those. We've had conversations about that, but I have trouble believing that Drake May slips outside the top 10 with the quarterback need, such as it is in the NFL. There are many teams looking for a signal caller. And like you said, he is a good prospect. It is hard to look at Drake May and go, as a developmental guy, we could do a lot better. Like you could do a little better, but again, if you're not picking number 1 in this draft, it's a question of a little better. And we could certainly do a lot worse, trolling the NFL free agency market than a guy with a ton of heads up potential and production like Drake May.
Well, so you said Drake May is going to be a top 10 quarterback. And look, I agree with you. And being 10 and 9 aren't going to be looking for quarterbacks. Basically, that means he's going to be a top 8 quarterback. So then I'll bring it back to you with JJ McCarthy. And obviously, like you said, they're talking about the intangibles and not so much on the field. Look, we're hearing a lot. Quarterbacks go 4 out of the first 4 or 4 out of the first 5.
Yeah.
Are you buying that? Or do you think there's a chance at 9, JJ sitting there and maybe the Bears are calling the Broncos or Raiders or the Rams if they're looking for an heir apparent and going, hey, are you interested in JJ McCarthy?
I think there is. And I think the draft has a way of cooling a lot of wild speculations when people are on the clock. Look, it's the world's most expensive poker game. The NFL draft is
I love it.
Fascinating because we're talking about tens of millions of dollars down the line, determined by whether or not a guy you take in the top 10 performs like you think he will. When there are any questions, and I mean any, you've seen the list of questions about top 10 draft picks. It gets really slight. People are, slicing the garlic with the razor blade, trying to find things about these guys because so much is at stake. That has a tendency to cool people's hand. When you're sitting there and the pot is, $80,000 in poker and people are like, I'd throw it all in there. You're actually sitting in front of the $80,000. You go, I'm not as sure as maybe I sounded like I was 2 weeks ago because I'm staring down the barrel of this. So there is a possibility that JJ will be there. Again, I don't know how hot people might be to move up. I think the consensus within the NFL is if JJ McCarthy is there at 11, he is off the board to Minnesota at their natural pick. So if they want to, again, if they do want to shove all their chips in the middle of the table and say, hey, we want this guy and we're willing to race Minnesota for him, it's possible that the Bears could benefit from that. I actually don't think that's going to happen. I think that's more likely with Atlanta. I think they could trade down, still get an edge that they like. That's their most talked about target for this draft. And so, Atlanta might benefit from that. But if we're talking about benefits to the Bears, that means, one less wide receiver may get taken because who knows? We'll see.
And last thing here on these quarterbacks and bouncing back to May, you're saying top 10. I agree with you. And of course, the speculation here is number 3, but number 3 to who? And just kind of a conversation on that with the Patriots. The now look, it's one of those things where it's difficult and it's tough to project, quarterbacks for 2025 when you sit there and go, I don't know if this quarterback class is going to be very good. But then you have situations like Joe Burrow, where Joe Burrow at this point in his career was not anywhere near the number 1 pick of the draft. So those type of players can come out. So I get that you could have a prospect like that next year. So when you're sitting with the number 3 pick and you have a prospect like Drake May, it does make some sense to get him, especially if you sit there and say, we can play Brissett, we can sit May, let him develop properly, not rush him through this. Because the one thing I would say, and why if the Patriots trade down and punt quarterback, I wouldn't say it's a bad move. They don't have the infrastructure, EJ, to me, to take a quarterback right now. This is a mess of a team with dozens of holes, basically, and they need picks, offensive line, weapons. They need everything. They have nothing in place for a rookie quarterback, basically.
I would agree with you that it's going to be a tough position for a rookie quarterback if he has to play early.
Yeah, that's how you ruin the quarterback to me.
Yep. It is a fairly bare cupboard, and he's going to get beat up. His receivers are not going to get great separation. What the Patriots need is an infusion of talent. That cupboard is not completely bare, but it's close. It is one of the lesser rosters in the NFL. They need multiple swings at it. I think Gerard Mayo knows that, and they're going to probably do that. If they can sell that pick, most likely they will. If they stick and pick, they really believe in Drake May, because they probably will stash him behind Brissett and keep him out of the line of fire this year and say, Maybe they try and accumulate picks with their later picks trading down. We don't know. It's a new regime for the most part in New England. And to me, if they pick May, it would indicate that they have extreme confidence in his abilities. It's not just there might not be anything next year. It's we're going to take the most valuable asset we have in the draft and spend it on a guy to sit. That is, to me, a large vote of confidence.
All right, so we've got 3 quarterbacks here in the top 8, possibly 4. Let's move over to receiver. I don't think we need to spend too much time on Marvin Harrison. Bears fans were still hoping to trade up for him. The Bears just don't even have the capital to do it. It's not really worth a conversation, in my opinion. But I think Malik Neighbors is, because there are plenty of mock drafts from people who know the league well where Neighbors is slipping to 7, 8, potentially even to the Bears at 9. Rome Odunze is the popular choice there. And there is absolutely a possibility that teams decide that this tackle class and they want pass rushers and Turners off the board and Alts off the board, maybe Fuaga or Latham go off the board. It's possible that some of those traditional positions go early, and Neighbors and Odunze maybe are even there at 9, both of them even. Who knows? Any of that's possible. But to me, I like Odunze, and if Odunze's there at 9, I think that's an excellent idea. But Neighbors' explosive playmaking ability, and maybe he doesn't, bring a unique skill set in terms of, he complements DJ Moore well or anything. He's too close to DJ Moore or whatever. I get all those situations, but to me, like you were talking about earlier, take football players, the Bears are actually in a situation because of the Keenan Allen trade, because of the Montez Sweat trade. Yes, they have depth issues and hole issues in a couple spots, but they have enough there where BPA is truly something they can look at. And if their board has Malik Neighbors in a spot and he's there, I mean, that's a backflip. It'd be luck. I don't think he's going to make it to 9, but that would be a backflip situation to me if Malik Neighbors is still there.
Okay, here's where I might twist your head a little bit.
All right, let's go.
If he's there, I'm not sure they take him.
Well, the one thing I would say is if Poles wants to trade back, I mean, that is a carrot to dangle with those teams in the teens. Like, hey, the guy that a lot of draft experts are saying may be the second best player in this draft behind either Harrison or Williams, depending on, he's here at 9. Come get him.
Malik Neighbors on the field is a transcendent football player. I will start with that because that's where I start. I start with tape. As I've grown in this business, I hear more things and get more information than I used to about non-football stuff or football stuff that occurs off the field. Let's put it that way. That's probably the best way to put it. And early in the process, I had Neighbors and Odunze neck and neck because they offer different skill sets, but both amazing skill sets. And I think they're both going to be very, very good pros in the NFL. I'm going to say that right now. As the process went on, I got more information to the positive about Rome, about the person and the player. Let's put it that way. And there started to be whispers about Neighbors. And whenever there's a whisper, I don't just take it at face value because, people can say things and we have seen them say things for any number of reasons.
Justin Fields has a bad work ethic.
That's correct. Example. And perfect example. And one of the reasons I don't just take that stuff at face value, and I don't just take one. If it's a one-off, sure, I'll throw it in the back of the bin and see if I come back to it. But when it really starts to matter to me is when multiple people say it. Multiple people started to say things about Neighbors. So I pushed back and said, well, what are we saying here? Is he a bad person? Everybody said, no, he is not a bad person. That's not what we're talking about. He is not a criminal. He does not have things that are going to keep him off the football field from off the football field. He's a great player. And I said, so what are we talking about here? Because everybody keeps saying it, but what are we really talking about here? And these 3 people who know each other, but we're not talking about this, certainly not while I was present, all said the exact same name. And they said, the Stephon Diggs stuff in Buffalo, and this is before he got traded. And I was like, yeah, you're talking about the offseason. Every offseason, there seems to be a Stephon Diggs drama. And, is he having a fallout with Josh? And the team's getting tired of it again.
Hey, that started in Minnesota.
Right. This is something that's followed that player. That's correct, right? We have a transcendently talented number 1 receiver. Stephon Diggs, I would say top 5 receiver up until last year in the NFL. pretty easily, but you were going to get behaviors off the field that were tiresome. I'm just going to say tiresome, not illegal, not whatever else, just tiresome. And to a person, all three people named the exact same connection with Malik Neighbors. And they said, you're going to get the same thing. You're going to get a football player that makes a difference and matters on the field, will make plays, will make explosive plays, will score touchdowns, all the things we saw at LSU regularly. But you are also probably going to have to deal with him stomping around a little bit. Now, if you're an organization that does that, cool. And there are lots of those in the NFL. There are plenty of teams. Make no mistake that will say, absolutely, come right over, Malik. We've got a spot for you. We can deal with that. And then there are teams that are less comfortable with that. And I think those teams are going to be even less comfortable if they're in the top 10 choosing that pick.
And the Bears are certainly one of those.
And the Bears are one. We have an example of just last year. Hey, we could have had this player, had some things we weren't super wild about. We're not going to take him, right? So if Malik Neighbors is there, I don't think it's a lock. Like the Bears definitely need wide receiver. I'm with you. If Odunze is there, I'm running the pick in because I am 100% sure, and a lot of people are as sure as I can be. Let's put it that way. We're all wrong about things. There's always things out of control that we don't see. But from everything we can see on and off the field for Rome Odunze, if he's there at 9, run the pick in. He is a blue chip football player. He's going to be with your team for a long time, and he is going to be a pillar of that team on the field and off. Do it. If it's Neighbors, I'm not so sure it's that easy. He is going to be a pillar on the field pretty easily, probably in his first season. I mean, trust me, I have visions of Caleb Williams whipping it to Malik Neighbors, and I'm like, I like the look of that. That could scare some defensive coordinators. Absolutely. I'm not sure Poles and his staff are comfortable with the full profile in the top 10. And so again, like you said, could it be dangled? Sure. Teams, again, that are looking for one of those big 3 wide receivers, maybe they pay a premium to get up and go get that guy. Or, again, maybe they want somebody else. I have more trouble with the Bears at 9 if Odunze is not there and nobody calls. As we've laid out the top 8, 3 quarterbacks for sure. MHJ is off the board. I really think the Chargers are either going to take an offensive lineman or trade back. They too would love to trade back like the Patriots, get a haul of picks. So then we'll see whoever trades into their spot, what they traded up for. Giants, I really think, is the first spot for Odunze or Neighbors. I don't think they probably take a quarterback. I think they probably take a wide receiver and just kind of go, yep, we need one. We need an explosive one. It's a very, very likely landing spot, I think, for Rome again.
Let me add that there. The Giants, while they have been a bad football team mostly for the last 5-6 years, the Maras are very similar to the McCaskies in terms of the type of players that they like in their organization. And I was talking to someone who knows the Giants team very well. And every mock, like the Bears and Odunze, as popular as that is, Neighbors and the Giants is a really popular one as well. And I've had a person who I said that knows the Giants really well, and I believe knows the Giants at the top of the organization, who said, do not be surprised if they take a receiver, if it's Odunze and not Neighbors. He's not guaranteeing it, but he's like,
no, but I could see that for all the reasons you talked about and all the reasons we just talked about with Rome. He's a great player. Like, great players don't tend to last. And, a lot of people look at like mock drafts and sort of projected orders early in the season, and it changes quite a bit from early in the college football season to now, because there's the end of the season and then there's draft season, and draft season does funny things to prospects and guys that you were quote unquote stealing. Like, you might, in an early mock draft, maybe you could get Rome in the 20s because nobody knew who he was, right? Or not enough people were paying attention. Again, as more people study, as more people focus, as more people talk to him, guys like that, cream rises to the top, right? He is a quality player with very few warts. Those are the guys that go in the top 10. So I would not be at all surprised to see Odunze off the board. The Giants, Tennessee, I think it's fair to say they take a tackle. I don't know which one, but I would be stunned in this class if Tennessee, with their needs, did not take a tackle.
Who is your second tackle? Because I think that's interesting. There's some guys who are still sticking with Fashanu. Fuaga's a popular choice. Where are you?
I think it's 2A, 2B with those two guys, and it depends on what you want, left or right. Like, if you need a left tackle, if you have a hole at left tackle and you need a presumably, right-handed quarterback, blindside pass protector, I think Fashanu's your guy. I think he is the premier pass protector in this draft. If you need a right tackle, if you have a left tackle in place and you don't want to move him and you're paying that guy a ton of money and you need a right tackle because you've got a hole at right tackle, I think Fuaga is your guy. So I think it's 2A, 2B. Like,
how do you see Latham?
I like Latham a lot. I think there is a split among NFL teams on Latham. I think some of them have him very high. In fact, I would not be surprised to see the Chargers trade down and take Latham, because he is a custom-made right tackle for what Harbaugh wants in that system. They have Slater at left, and you put Latham at right. I think they would be extremely happy with that. I don't think draft value-wise they would be happy with that at 5. So if somebody calls them and says, "Hey, do you want to move down to, whatever?" Again, I don't think Latham is in huge danger of going off the board in the top 10. So right after that, if
it's 11,
Chargers can trade down 11, 12, 13 and take Latham and get extra picks, that's a double served need for them. That would be, I think, one of the best case scenarios. Extra picks and Latham with who they have in the building. Great. Again, Tennessee, probably you want a blindside pass protector for Will Levis. Seems like they're going to give Will Levis some run. I would say Fashanu if Alt's off the board. If Alt's there, come on, pair him up with his former teammate and Skoronski, and those are 2 pretty good pieces on your offensive line.
Yeah, and that's the thing where I think what the Chargers do when you're trying to figure out this top 8, what the Chargers do is highly dependent on the Titans, because you sit there and say, well, if the Chargers trade with Minnesota comes up, takes the 4th QB, whatever it might be. Okay, fine. Then Alt's sitting there for Tennessee. But if Alt's not there, I also start wondering if Tennessee's listening to phone calls and going, hey, we need offensive line help. We've got 2 or 3 guys here that we're comfortable with at this point with Joe Alt gone. You want to come up for Odunze? You want to come up for Neighbors? You want to come up for whoever? Dallas Turner? You want Dallas Turner? Atlanta's right behind us. Come on up, whatever it might be. I think that's going to impact Tennessee tremendously. And that's where this becomes so difficult, where you sit there and say, well, is New England going to take a quarterback, or are they going to trade with Minnesota? Because if they take the quarterback, then Minnesota needs to come with the Chargers, and it all trickles down. And that's why this is impossible to try and predict. But, while we go through this, so we're saying 3 quarterbacks, maybe 4, 2 receivers, maybe 3, 1 tackle, maybe 2. Would you agree with that at this point?
I would agree with that at this point. And like you said, the butterfly effect really, I believe, probably starts at 3 with New England. Like, New England could go a bunch of ways. They could stick a pick. They could trade out of that pick. Somebody else has a different need. Presumably it would be for May at that point, just because of draft value and need. But then it gets really interesting. Does Los Angeles also trade out, or do they just stick and pick, take a tackle? Maybe they do take Latham at 5. Wouldn't that be fun? That's why the draft is so fascinating, is because we know what's happening at 1. We're pretty sure what's happening at 2. And then at 3, throw your papers in the air and watch. Like, it's going to be a show.
Yeah. Again, that's the thing. Like, what if Daniels is not the pick? What if May ends up being QB2 and goes 2? Well, that changes everything as well, because you don't know how these teams have individually evaluated these quarterbacks, where, Jaden Daniels may be QB4 for New England, but he's QB2 for the Giants or for the Vikings. And they're like, oh, we're coming up hard now. So it makes it interesting. But all right, beyond the tackles, the receivers, and the quarterbacks, I think we're talking about Dallas Turner potentially being a top 8 pick. Is there anyone else that we haven't mentioned? We'll get into Turner here then and the Falcons in a second. But is there anyone else we haven't mentioned potentially in this top 8 group that you sit there and go, that's definitely a guy that could be in that group when it's all said and done?
Boy, I think there always is, less so in the top 10, but certainly in the top 20. We'll start to see opinions vary in this draft, because depending on who you talk to, probably 20, 21 first round grades in this class. And, again, valuation is going to matter. Supply and demand matters, whether or not people want to jump for things. If Dallas Turner's there for Atlanta, I would be so surprised, given their makeup, who's running their defense. Again,
he seems like such a perfect fit.
Who's in their room right now? Like, he just slots in, and exactly where he's going to play, and that's best for him. There are teams that are, I hate to say it, but more traditionally kind of 4-3. We know that's a misnomer anymore, but need a bigger end who can set the edge all the time. It's not really Turner's strength. If you're that team, And, quite frankly, we could have a little side discussion here because the Bears are, they're Eberflus's defense, but they brought over Washington from Buffalo. And if you look at the type of ends that Buffalo drafts, it's not Dallas Turner, right? They draft big, heavy, strong guys, right? With great athletic profiles, but that's Jared Verse. Like, if you're looking for an edge for the Bears and Washington is your new DC, like, it's Verse, not Turner. I like Turner for what he is, but I can't see the Bears slotting him in, again, with preferences coming from their new DC. We'll see how it goes, but Turner for Atlanta seems like a lockstep fit. And then, we're at 9 with whatever's left. And again, my best case scenario is Odunze is there, run the card in. My next best case scenario at that point is literally trade back. If you can do it, if anybody calls and you can move down, because you're going to get a very similar player. It doesn't matter who you're after. You're going to get a very similar player as long as you probably don't go into the 20s. So pick up the extra pick. You could use it. You've got a huge gulf between 9 and 75. Fill something in there. After that, it's probably Newton or Murphy. And that's Byron Murphy Jr. or Johnny Newton from Illinois, which is the penetrating 3-tech that the Bears don't have. I know they played Javon Dexter there last year. I know they have Billings for early down stuff. Love both of those players, but that's not going to keep me from drafting penetrating 3-techs who can really make a difference and be a pass rusher. Again, people say they need pass rusher. You can get pass rushers inside and they might be even more valuable. Quarterbacks hate inside pressure. It shows up the fastest, ruins plays the quickest.
Absolutely.
So if you can get, my preference would probably be Newton, but I would not be upset with Murphy either. I can see the case for both. That would be my third. Again, if they have to stick and pick and nobody comes up, Verse is the edge I would take, again, based on Washington's preferences, how he liked to run that defense in Buffalo. And then my last choice would be Fashanu, and it's just a value pick. He has familiarity with Caleb. I like Braxton Jones. That. I think he's good enough not to replace. You don't need to make a hole where you don't have one. You've got a developing left tackle that you can live with. But, Olu Fashanu was thought to be a top 5 player in this draft only a couple of months ago. He's still a very good player. Nothing happened to him. And you just take him, pair him with Darnell Wright. You've got bookends. Again, not my favorite scenario, my 5th favorite scenario. There's 4 in front of that, right? But, my worst case is Odunze is gone. You're at 9 and nobody calls because you're not getting maximum value. You're still getting a good player, still getting a blue chip player. We talked about this earlier on, right? But it's just where value lines up with this board and sort of draft capital needs. I would feel a little air go out of the balloon at that point. Let's put it.
All right. So 4 QBs go, 3 wide receivers go, and Joe Alt go. So yeah. Dallas Turner is there. And that's the one thing that's interesting about this is if you're a Dallas Turner fan, and again, you want to talk about 3-4 and 4-3, we were just talking about that a little bit. But as a Bears fan, if you're a Dallas Turner fan, you could sit there and go that Turner, Alt, or Odunze. You just do the math. If 4 QBs go, one of them is there. It's just sure. the way it's going to work. But if there's no Alt and there's no wide receiver, and obviously the 4 QBs are gone, are you at that point? I'll ask you, what would you want to do with the pick 9, and what do you think Poles and Eberflus would do with pick 9?
I'm really thinking of it from their perspective. I would swear a little if it was me, because again, I didn't get what I wanted, and I can throw my little fit in the draft room. And that happens every year for every team. There are always guys that they're waiting for, and you get pipped. It happens to me in mock drafts. I'll be in the 5th round and be like, no, I'll get my center down there. And the pick before I go, I still throw my papers. I'm like, come on, I was waiting on that guy. And it happens to every team every year. What would the Bears do? I really think they would probably go 3-tech. I think it's a higher rated player for them. Dallas Turner, in terms of fit, great player. I am a Dallas Turner fan. I want to say that right now. I love his game. I think it is a very valuable skill set in the NFL. He is a young and developing player. He is explosive. He has got speed around the edge. He's got flexibility to drop into coverage, which is why he's not that sort of heavy, base setting end. And if you're looking for him to play that role, you're really kind of missing out on all his best strengths. If you're just getting him engulfed in a left tackle all the time or a duo block with a tight end, like he's not going to look that good. You put that guy in space, he's explosive. You can have him go forwards, go backwards. He has the athleticism to do that. Fascinating player. In terms of how the Bears are running their defense right now, which I don't think is going to change wildly, Washington's theories sort of align, especially up front with Eberflus's theories. They want a heavier end there. To me, that's Verse. Verse has way more power and is a guy that can set, collapse, crush the edge, still has some pass rush. He's not as dynamic as Turner in the pass rush, but he, if you're talking about a fit for the Bears defense as it is, it's there. But if you ask me about those 2-3 techs, I have them rated higher than Verse. So again, if you're just going for a blue chip player and you just want pass rush, doesn't really matter where it is, I would say Newton or Murphy, pick your favorite flavor, then Verse.
Yeah, and my favorite flavor there is Murphy. Anyone who's been following my content, I've been a big believer in him. I really, it was one of those things where I actually started watching him a little bit in February. And then, as I'm trying to learn my way through, draft Twitter and draft season and expand how much I've done in the past, in February, when you were looking at those big boards, Murphy's sitting there 24, 25, 26 on a lot of them. And I'm sitting there going, I think he's better than this. Like that was all I was like, I think he, especially at the position he plays, the speed and the agility, even the power that he can demonstrate. I like what I see there. So I'm definitely a Murphy guy. And you tell me, Jared Verse. I am not a big believer in Jared Verse. I do not think he's going to be a bad football player. I just don't think he's going to be a dynamic football player. He strikes me and again, different styles. So when I say this, I mean this in a production aspect. What Leonard Floyd was for the Bears, I believe is kind of what Jared Verse would be, where he can set the edge. He can do some different things. I know Floyd went coverage. That's not going to be what Verse does really, but I just don't see a dynamic pass rusher. I don't see elite bend. Look, you tell me if I'm wrong. You're the expert here, not me. But to me, if they just stick at 9 and take Verse, I will be disappointed in that pick, because to me, you are just selecting a good, safe football player. This guy's only 2 months younger than Aiden Hutchinson. He is a much older prospect. I just don't see the big ceiling. I see a nice floor. I see a nice, safe floor, but I don't see a big ceiling.
Yeah, and there are other names that I think, will excite draft fans a lot less. And there are some other Alabama, you could say edges, but they're really defensive ends to me. Again, there's a type, right? Guys like Jonathan Allen when he came out, right? He is a big, strong, powerful edge setter who can sort of crush and collapse the pocket that way. He's going to pick up 4 or 5 sacks a year because he is a solid and, I'm not saying disruptive is a little disingenuous. Like he's a guy that you have to game plan for because he's strong and you're not really going to get anything on his side. But at the same time, is he going to flash around your left tackle and destroy your quarterback? Not likely. And I see Verse being not all the way up the slider of power that Jonathan Allen has, but more in that vein for sure. And I'm with you, a guy that is not going to be as dynamic. And that's tough in the top 10. Right? Because if he is a very solid football player, if he plays for 7 or 8 years, setting the edge in the NFL, which is a necessary and needed and important skill, it will keep you in the league and it will get you paid. It is not flashy, and he will always be sort of under the cloud of, but he's a top 10 player and he only gets, 5 sacks a year. And, 2 of them are cleanup sacks. Like that, it's a very possible outcome for him. Other people see more flash and pass rush with Verse. I'm with you. I see more power, less bend. He is a good player. He is a relentless player. I like him. I too would feel like, I feel like you just could have had a bigger bite at the apple than Verse at 9. Again, good football player, slots in, plays right away. I think he will always be chasing the draft slot if that happens.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And let's kind of play with the first round here a little bit. And let's say the Bears do trade back. And I think that's, if you look at the top 30 visits, the pro days they went to, they are definitely looking at guys that they might be able to grab in the late teens. So let's talk about that group a little bit here. I think, we talked Murphy and Newton. I don't think we need to go back there. Obviously, those are guys, if they trade back and those guys are sitting there, those are absolutely some guys that they could look at and would make a lot of sense for them. But you're talking about edges. You're talking maybe Latu slips because of the neck. You know, Chop Robinson is a guy that a lot of people are talking about. Maybe, you know, Missouri.
Darius Robinson.
Darius Robinson. Yes, thank you.
Yep.
You know, maybe that's a direction they could go with the wide receivers with Mitchell and Thomas, something like that potentially. So if the Bears trade back, and let's just say roughly the late teens is where they end up, somewhere in that 16 to 19 range. Make it 15 to 19 if the Colts want to move up. But what kind of prospect on EJ Snyder's board would you sit there and be like, that was a smart selection?
Either of the defensive tackles is who I would lead off with, because one of them is almost certainly going to be there if that's the range you're talking about. If you're talking about late teens, Newton or Murphy is going to be there. Latu is starting to come into range for me, depending on your comfort with his medicals. He is the most advanced pass rusher in this class, bar none.
Best tape. Do you agree? Best tape of the edges?
Absolutely.
Pure tape.
Not even close. Like, his technical refinement with his hands is like Aaron Donald level. He has 3 to 4 moves. He has 3 to 4 counter moves. Most of these guys don't have a legit counter move.
Right.
I write that in tape all the time. Like, man, he needs a counter move. Like, his first one works, but it works too often. And then if it doesn't work, he's stuck. Latu, move, another move, counter move, gets to the quarterback. Move, counter move off counter move, gets to the quarterback. You don't see that from college pass rushers. So if you're comfortable with his medicals, his production, some people will talk about the limits physically. He's not a bad athlete. He's a good athlete. He's in the 70th percentile. Like, he is good enough to be a pass rusher in the NFL. He has shorter arms. I understand. Take all that, roll it into a ball, and watch tape against top prospects, right? He largely destroys them. So again, 20-ish, Latu would be in the picture for me just because he's so good. It's a little early to get the next wide receiver in line. For me, that's probably Brian Thomas Jr., the other receiver from LSU. If you're talking about late teens, I'd feel better at like 22, 24, picking up Brian Thomas Jr., but he'd be the next target for, again, a position group we talked about. And then the sort of out of left field choice that I would love, but Bears fans would howl about, would be Zach Frazier, the center from West Virginia.
Is he your top center?
Again, it's 1A and 1B with JPJ. The problem with JPJ that I've heard very recently actually is that he had concussion trouble, and I was not aware of that. And that scares the heck out of me.
Sure.
Because he's a young guy. He's powerful. I've seen him in person. He really moves. He's huge for a center. Just upside. Tough, really good. I'll just say, just his fiber. He's built to be an offensive.
It's like a great offensive line personality. Like, he reminds me of like Mark Schlereth would have been when he was 21.
Yes. Yeah. So, we were walking out of the pro day at Oregon, and there's a big old truck, right? Mutter tires on it, and custom plate says Big Jacks. And I'm like, guess whose truck that is? Like, you just knew. So love JPJ. I think he's a good player. The medicals, if there are concussion issues and he struggled through some other injury issues this year as well, which again, just, I don't get to see all that. So I don't know. I just heard about it. He was sort of my top center going away, but Zach Frazier's just that. He's kind of like Fashanu in that he's a stalking horse. Like, if you asked who the best center was last summer, Zach Frazier, like, not a question. Tons of production, wrestling background, super strong, great tape, good metrics, whatever you want to look at. Like, if you need a center, plug and play, Frazier, right? And then the rise of JPJ, I get it. But like, I still think the Bears need a center. I know they're going to play Bates at center. I'm okay with that. It doesn't keep me from picking a player like Zach Frazier. Now, the teens is rich. I will say that straight off the top. Teens is rich. I would rather get him in the late 20s, and I think that's where he's going to go. Some people are like, oh, he'll be there at 35. Not particularly sure that he will, especially with some questions about JPJ. If he's the first center off the board, I don't think he will be there at 35. So,
well, let me ask you, since you're talking centers, let me ask you about Graham Barton then, because I know he's a top center for a lot of, big time draft analysts. I would assume he's your third center then.
It depends on where you're going to play him. And that's the big one with Barton, is because he is one of, I think, 3 guys in this draft that I'm completely comfortable playing him any of the 5 positions.
Oh, you put him at tackle.
Yeah, he played tackle. So He, in a pinch, I don't think it's his best position. I would much rather have him as an interior offensive lineman. And that is great for the Bears because the Bears have had real trouble keeping their guards healthy. Again, Bates is going to start off at center. But again, if any of those guys go down, you have a high level backup that is basically, as soon as he gets on the field, going to become a starter and become tough to remove. And then you have the flexibility to move him around. I don't want them to do that. I would much rather, and I'm on record many times saying, pick a position for a young lineman and let him get good at it. But Barton has the true flexibility to back up all three interior offensive line spots. And he's the guy I did have listed behind Frazier for that reason, because look, if Tevin goes down, you need a left guard. You could play Barton there, right? Bates you want to move Bates out and he's going to be the left guard. Now you need a center. Barton could be the center, and a very good one. Highly athletic guy, great movement skills, super, super flexible dude.
All right. Well, if they trade back and they get one of these picks, I do think it's Trench. So, I know we talked about Thomas Mitchell. I don't think they trade back from 9 and still take a receiver. I think they may look that in the second round. So we'll get to that in a second.
Sure.
But playing the tackle position again here, if some tackles go off the board early, so Alt's gone, Fuaga's gone, Fashionu's gone, Latham is gone. Let's stop there.
Okay.
Where if those 4 tackles are gone, Bears are sitting there on the clock. Is there a tackle? Again, we're talking that 16 to 20 range where you sit there and go, I don't know if it's Mims, I don't know if it's Guyton.
Yeah.
Is there another tackle you'd be interested in?
I wouldn't, again, and that's based on my belief in Braxton Jones. That's when I'm starting to look at the room and saying, not just pure football player. Now we're down to dealer's choice. We're in the 20s, right? It's not just, hey, top 10, I need a blue chip player. And if it happens to be a tackle and he's my 8th rated player, I just do that because it's a good football player. Here I'm saying, hey, there's lots of good football players and I have needs that I think are bigger than tackle. I like the players you mentioned. Mims is one of the most fascinating players in this draft. Absolute man-child of a dude. Very few pass reps. Didn't stay healthy. Only played 6 games this year. He is the ultimate sort of wild card of, if he hits, he's the highest variance player, I'll say, in this draft. If he hits, he could be an absolute all-pro for many years. If he continues to be injured, struggles, and doesn't develop, he could be a 3rd tackle in this league. That is a huge spread for a guy you're looking at taking in the top 20. Now, all the physical skills point to, I can fix him. And offensive line coaches, they're looking at that guy and just licking their lips and being like, gimme, gimme, gimme. That guy's amazing.
Moldable clay, right?
Yeah, not too many guys like that on the planet. But none of those tackles are going to pull me in that direction, because I've already got a good young one and I have other needs. And I think there's still borderline blue chip players on the board.
And I just realized one name I didn't bring up. It depends on what you see him in terms of position. Fautanu.
Yeah, Fautanu actually would be higher than either of the guys you mentioned. And again, like Graham Barton, I think he could be a very high level guard, could easily play tackle in a pinch if those guys went down. I wouldn't put him at center, but if you need him at guard or tackle, either one, extremely flexible, former volleyball player who just stopped playing volleyball because he got too big. He just kept growing. Yeah, really interesting player. I think he's going to be a better guard right off, but I don't have any worry about his measurements or his ability to play tackle. He's shown a very high level of that. Extremely good feet, really, really good feet. Some of the best feet in this class.
All right, let's move on to the second round here, EJ. And if there's something other than receiver that you really like in round 2, because now we're going to talk about if the Bears move back into the late teens, that means let's hope that they did pick up a second round pick along the way here, which means they're picking somewhere in the mid to late 40s, So when we're looking at that spot in the draft, we already talked about the 3 centers, probably none of them getting there, but if one of them somehow is there, EJ is going to start drooling. So, but beyond that, what are the receivers? Maybe there's another position we haven't really talked about in that kind of mid-second round range that you sit there and go, that's a value pick if Brian Poles is in the position to take that guy after a trade down.
I'm going to focus on wide receiver. It's where I think the value in this draft is going to be in that range. And to be very specific, it's in that range. I think the tackles are going to go earlier because, again, there's going to start to be a run. Guys are going to go, and then you're going to get to whatever it is, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th tackle, and people are going to go, hold up. I'm not taking the 8th best offensive tackle before I take the 5th best wide receiver in this draft. And the draft will balance itself out. It always does that. In that range, my choices would be Ricky Pearsall from Florida, Xavier Legette from South Carolina, or sort of sneaking in there. And this is one of my guys that, again, it's probably 15, maybe 18 picks earlier than a lot of people see him, Jalen McMillan from Washington. Now, McMillan missed most of this season. He came back at the very end of the season. You saw some of that spark. But if you go back and look at the 2022 tape, he was dominating. It was Rome and McMillan. Polk had a decent season, but McMillan really showed what he could do fully healthy last year. I think he is a bona fide wide receiver 2 in the NFL. Our buddy Brad Spielberger and I have been crushing on McMillan since probably late November. Really think he's kind of a dark horse in this draft. Might be a little early in the 40s, but Pearsall would be a fine choice. Xavier Legette, I really like, and McMillan, I would not be sad with. I know a lot of people would throw their papers at that particular moment because they don't know him or they think he's the 3rd best Washington wide receiver, whatever. He's one of my guys in this draft.
I'm a big Ricky Pearsall guy. This guy just knows how to play football. I'm a big fan of his. I think he's destined to have a very good career. I think if he was 21 and not, I believe he's 24 or at least turning 24 soon, I think he probably would be a 1st-round prospect. That's just my opinion. But the other name I want to ask you about, and I'm hot and cold on this guy, but he just strikes me as a guy the Bears would pick based on his ability to just go up and get jump balls, something that they don't really have on the roster right now. And that is Keon Coleman, who was probably wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 in this draft class in October and has definitely fallen, but is still obviously considered a 2nd-round pick. What's your thoughts on Coleman if the Bears went that direction?
It would be interesting, and I would understand it. I wouldn't necessarily love it. Great player in the fact that he has a huge frame, great catch radius. I think he dropped 0 balls this year, which is amazing considering the types of balls he was thrown in traffic. Doesn't have the greatest production and doesn't have, I'll say, the widest envelope of usage. However, he does fill a need. The Bears don't have a guy to do what he does as well as he does. So a lot of people are thinking about DJ Moore and Keenan, and they're like, hey, we need a versatile slot weapon or maybe a speed slot to take the top off the defense. And he's neither of those. So he's outside of what people are thinking about, but he does fill a niche that's not currently filled in the Bears wide receiver room. I would think of it a bit as a luxury pick because, again, his usage is small. He's like that tool you get in your garage that does one thing. It's one thing you really need, but you only use it 3 times a year. I would feel a little bit like that if the Bears pick Keon Coleman. Now, he does have more potential for sure, but worries me because he came from a good passing offense, right? He was the number 1 wide receiver in that passing offense. He had a good quarterback, and production was not anything to make you jump off the couch about. Now, the types of catches he made, again, pretty darn intriguing.
All right, let's move on here. We got 75 and 122. I want to kind of talk about those a little bit here before we wrap up. And of course, EJ's doing a great job, been on for quite a while here. So let me ask you this before we get into specific players. You've looked at this draft, you've analyzed these prospects, and you've gone deep. Where someone like me, I'm not sure where the cliff is because I haven't looked at everyone. But everyone keeps talking about the cliff here. If the Bears are unable to trade back at 9, if that's what they want to do, so their next pick is 75, and Ryan Poles is sitting there going, man, I really want some more picks.
Yeah.
Where are you comfortable trading back? Maybe 122 you're okay there and the trade back later there. But where are you in terms of kind of a cliff where if Ryan Poles does trade back, you sit there and go, I don't know if that was the best plan?
It's tough because the valuation for a lot of the trades you're looking at 9, especially if they're not very far back. Now, 9 is a very valuable pick, make no mistake. But if you're only going to 13, right? It's only 4 spots. You're not getting the pick you probably want. Everybody wants a pick in the 40s, right? You're not getting a pick in the 40s to move back 4 spots. You might not be getting a pick in the 50s. It might be in the late 60s, depending.
Yeah, the only way I'd say you could get 40s for going 9 to 13 is if you told the Raiders, look, the Vikings are still sitting at 11. They're taking the quarterback that's available at 9. So do you want him or not?
Yeah, it is possible. And quarterback would be a great incentive. It would be a huge boon for the Bears, but you're typically not getting what you want. So you're getting another pick, honestly, in the neighborhood of 75, maybe a little sooner, maybe a little bit after. So there is this cliff, and it's kind of a bummer, again, being a Bears guy and doing mock drafts. There's all these players in the 40s and 50s that I just never look at because I'm not touching them. I can't. So sometimes I'll make just a random trade, even if Odunze is on the board, just to say, I want to pick some of these guys. I want to see what I would do. I want to look at those value scenarios. And so I either, pick for another team, or I make some crazy trade for the Bears just so I can have some ammo in that very, I would say, meaty part of this draft. Lots of players I never even consider. So shelf really depends on position, like it always does. There are, I think, like in reverse, the shelf doesn't even really start for inside linebacker. Or open. That shelf doesn't open in this draft until the second round. Other positions, by the time you're through 2.5 rounds, edge, for instance, you're picking a role player. You're picking a third down pass rush specialist who you like the bend of, or something like that. So that shelf closes, 2.5, maybe 3 rounds in. So depends on where and what the Bears need. Being a draft guy, I fully believe more swings is better, always, because you're just not right. None of us are right all the time. So you might as well have more bites at the apple, more shots. It would be interesting. I wouldn't go, if you're going deeper than, say, 150 or 160, you've got a value grade on a guy that is just higher than the rest of the league, and you just want to snag him. Right. It's not like, oh, hey, a pick at 175 is going to guarantee you something that you love. And that's, in some other drafts, that's still a fairly early pick. Here, 175 feels a little bit like the wilderness, unless you've got one guy that's down the board in a position like inside linebacker or running back, or you've got some smaller school tight end who you're like, he'll be there. We just need a pick to go get him. Our value is not going to match, but it doesn't matter because we like that guy. So after about 160, 165, it's like, who you looking for? Like, you're looking for somebody specific at that point.
All right. Well, let's, we theorize second round just because obviously if they trade back, that's, I'm sure, going to be the goal. But like you said, if they trade back a little bit and get another third rounder, we're talking similar range to 75. So let's not theorize 5th, 6th, 7th round picks that don't exist on this thing right now. But they have 75, they have 122. So let's start with 75. Who are some guys that makes sense for the Bears, for whatever variety of reasons that you're looking at and saying that these are the picks I would get behind with number 75?
Yeah, these are my happy dance guys at 75. If any of these guys end up at 75, I'm thrilled, and I hope the Bears pick them. So we mentioned Leggett and McMillan. I don't think either of those guys make it to 75, but if they do, I'm thrilled.
McMillan a better chance, I assume, than Leggett?
Slightly, by about 15 picks. I would expect Leggett to go late 40s, mid 50s. I would expect McMillan to go early to mid 60s. Right. And again, if either one of them drop, you never know. It happens. Like, maybe there's something in their file we didn't see, injury or something else, and they're sliding down the board. Maybe the Bears know about that too. They probably do. Maybe they don't pick them at that point. That's happened to me before, where I'm like, this is great, you're going to pick blank. And then that guy slides another full 3 rounds, and you're like, oh, there was something that I didn't know about that guy. Same thing with Marshawn Nealon, the defensive end from Western Michigan. I expect him to be off the board in the 50s. If he's there at 75, I'm running that.
Run the card.
Like, he is a great fit. He is a great player. I like him a lot. That would be a tremendous value. Again, think he's going to be off the board in the 50s. Brandon Dorlus, the defensive end from Oregon. Now, lots of folks are talking about Ruka Rororo from Clemson. Great player, great name. If you miss on Rook, like, Dorlus is your backup plan, and he probably is going to be around in the 70s. He might go off the board late 60s, early 70s, but at 75, that's a player I see on the board pretty typically. And again, I think the fit with the Bears defense in terms of what they're looking for, playing a guy like that, he's got flexibility. He can play 3 tech. He can play 5 or 6. Playing him opposite Montez Sweat, like that would be a suffocating line. That is a big, strong, athletic player. On the other edge, Austin Booker, the edge.
Yeah, I like Booker.
I love Booker, and this is right in his roundhouse range. I think, again, some teams might be a little bit higher on him. I mean, by a little, like in the 60s. If it's 75 and Booker's on the board, and you did like a lot of the things that Dallas Turner brought, but you didn't get Dallas Turner, like Austin Booker is a guy you can slot right in there. And then one of my guys that's higher than he's ranked, but I will pound the table right now and say 3 years from now, you will look at pick 75 and go, man, that was too low. He should have gone off the board way earlier. And that's Mason McCormick, interior offensive lineman from South Dakota State, played left guard his entire career, absolute ass kicker, top level athlete, scored like a 9.99 RAS, very few pressures, smart guy, can play center, can snap, has made line protection calls because South Dakota's center was younger than he and the left tackle, Garrett Greenfield, who played together for a long time. So he actually made the calls for the young center from left guard. Like Mace played left guard, but said, this is what we're doing for a year until the center got up to speed, or half a year until the center got up to speed. So he's already made those calls. And then they had him snapping at the Shrine Bowl, and he looked completely natural, which is crazy for a guy with almost 0 starts at center in college, but very, very experienced, 60 something starts, or not 60, 57 starts in college. Super strong, really smart. Again, great makeup for an offensive lineman. Gives you that positional versatility. A lot of people have him ranked in the early 90s. I think he's worth 75 in a heartbeat.
All right, and I got a couple more for you. Let me ask you same question on 122. Bears sitting there in the 4th round. Again, no moves. This is where they're picking. Couple guys in that range that you think would be smart picks.
Bears are going to need some safeties. I know they signed some, but they don't have good young players in the pipeline besides Brisker at safety. So they need a guy. I would lean a little bit more towards coverage. That would lead me to Dadrian Taylor Demerson, also known as Rabbit, the safety from Texas Tech. I think he's got great range, can play single high on one play, can come down and cover the slot the next play. If they don't get him, my backup at 122 for safety would be Cole Bishop. Some people say that's the other safety out of Utah after Sione Vaki, who's probably going to be selected a little bit higher, but I really like Cole Bishop in that backup pass protector role. Also can enforce when he needs to. He's a physical guy, but a really underrated guy in terms of athleticism and smarts. Those would be my safety picks. Dadrian Taylor Demerson probably going to go off about 100, so Bishop is a more likely grab there. Again, this is a clap my hands if he's still there. Dominic Pooney, the offensive tackle from Kansas. I think he'll probably go off the board in about the 90s. So if he's still there at 122, he's got positional flexibility. But I really like his tape at tackle. Could slide inside if you need him to. Bears could really use a guy like that. Bo Limmer, the center from Arkansas. If they didn't get a center earlier, I think Bo Limmer's a very good center. Experienced, played in the SEC, played behind another very good center who currently plays in Washington. Very, very good player. Dwayne Carter, defensive tackle from Duke. Some people look at him. He's more of I would say a true 3 tech, but he's got good size as well. He's not just a slasher. And some people look at his 2023 tape and go, I don't know. Look at his 2022 tape. Like if Carter had come out last year, he would have been a top 40 player. He had a dominant 2022. And then last one is Malik Washington. Got to shout him out. My guy from Virginia, wide receiver, tremendously productive. Like Virginia, when he got there, he was a transfer. Coach said, look, Malik, we're going to run our offense through you. And they did. They held good on that. Caught a million balls, led the ACC in receiving, tremendous hands, great routes. Some people say not great size. He's not tall. He's 5'9", but he's like 200 pounds, built like a running back. Very, very good after the catch as well. Not so much as a guy like Malachi Corley, but a guy that you know exactly what you're doing with him on day one. Again, slots into the Bears wide receiver room. He's your wide receiver 3 or 4 in the slot. He's productive from day one. Super smart football player. Love Malik Washington.
All right, let me ask you one more, and we've gone on an hour here, and I didn't even bring this up to you ahead of time. I just kind of thought of it, but we're going back to Caleb Williams, and this isn't quite a Caleb Williams question, but we talked about how you make a rookie quarterback comfortable, offensive line, and all this. Look, one other thing you can do, especially if you're a little concerned about, how his demeanor and all, which is we've heard about it for months, and I don't think the Bears are concerned, but he is a unique individual. He is his own cat. If there was a USC teammate, I'm not saying Jack Haley for Dennis Rodman kind of a thing, like you just have a guy on the roster, but a guy that would make sense for the Bears that you're like, you know what? If you get one of Caleb's teammates and bring him as part of the draft class just to kind of make Caleb feel warm and fuzzy inside, are there any USC players that you sit there and go, you know what? If the Bears drafted him, not a bad idea.
Taj Washington's the first one that comes to mind. He's going to be after that 122. My guess is he's going to be about 155 in value. But again, he has a great rapport. He was the guy that really moved the USC offense. Rice got all the press. Taj Washington made a lot of those big plays. If you've watched Caleb tape, you're already familiar with Taj. Great hands down the field. Average depth of target is actually pretty deep. Great yak threat. He is slightly built. That's one of the reasons he's going to slip. But again, we talked to him. Very understated guy. He is not flashy for a wide receiver. He's a little bit quiet, but very, very smart. Has a great connection with Caleb. Caleb loves him as a wide receiver. That's going to make him very comfortable. I'll throw one more out there, and his name escapes me, but it was their center last year who was hurt in the bowl game. So in the very last game of what was going to be his college career, he blew out his ACL, stayed in college, rehabbed all year, and he was at the pro day. And I was like, man, who's that guy? Like, he's moving really well. And we were sitting with members of the offensive line from USC. And they're like, that's our center from last year. He's coming out this year. He spent the whole year rehabbing. He's completely healthy. And he was one of the better analytically. He was kind of like Matt Lee for Miami this year. If you looked at his tape and you looked at his stats, you went, man, that guy's really good. He's really solid. He doesn't look the part necessarily physically. He's not a big, imposing guy. Same with Matt Lee. He's just built a little bit funny. He's not an off the bus guy. But if you look at his tape, you go, man, he played against that Clemson line with Rook, and they did not have a good day against him. So, I think Poles was there, obviously, for the pro day. He saw that guy. A lot of people have forgotten about him. Yep. A lot of people have forgotten about him, and you can get him as a UDFA. So.
All right. Well, EJ, thank you for so much time. And of course, Bootleg Football, make sure you catch it, him and Brett Coleman. What do you guys have planned here for the draft and leading up to the draft here?
Man, it's content like every day. We're dropping 3 pods. We're trying to shuffle in a couple more pods from interviews we did at the Shrine Bowl, like Taj and the South Dakota State guys. Mace McCormick and Garrett Greenfield. We did our first ever combo interview with those guys. So that's coming out this week. And then same schedule for the draft, Wednesday evening, Draftmas Eve, just kind of blow off steam for a couple hours in a live stream, and then live streaming every pick of the 2024 NFL draft from Los Angeles.
All right. Well, there he is. EJ Snyder. Of course, it's at Football EJ. I'm sure you're all following him already, but if you're not, make sure you go on the Twitter X machine right now and hit that follow button. EJ, phenomenal content. I could have gone another 2 hours with you, but we'll end it here. Thanks so much for so much time. And I am looking forward to the new era of Chicago Bears football, which is just over a week away.
It should be great. Thanks for having me on, Bill. It's one of my favorite traditions during draft time.
Absolutely.